everyone, and welcome to another Into the Void Real Review. This time we are reviewing Black Phone 2, a Blumhouse joint directed by Scott Derrickson and stars Mason Thames and Ethan Hawke. The first Black Phone presented an eerie take of a child kidnapper known as the Grabber who imprisoned kids in a basement before killing them. Finn, played by Mason Thames, was the kid that got away and killed the Grabber, played by the diabolical Ethan Hawke in the first film. Spoiler, I know, sorry. He was the final boy in that one. How come we never give boys the final boy moniker like we do with final girls? It was a thought, but let's get back to the juice and potatoes of Black Phone 2. This time the story revolves around the sister of Flynn, Gwen, played effectively by Madeline Graw, who has seen visions of the Grabber's first victims in her dreams prior to her brother's kidnapping in the last movie. Meanwhile, Flynn is having to cope with the emotional trauma that he experienced at the hands of Wild Bill. Now you're asking me, Wild Bill? Let me explain. The Grabber used to be known as Wild Bill back when he murdered his first 3 victims at a winter camp in Colorado called Alpine Lake. So this movie is a prequel in that it explores the beginnings of The Man in the Devil Mask, yet it is also a sequel because the actual movie takes place after the events of the first one and now centers more on the sister Gwen, who's losing her mind to visions of dead children that haunt her in her sleep and in her waking hours as well. Flynn is still part of the story, but he takes a backseat to the proceedings, getting in fights with the kids at school and trying to mask his own post-traumatic stress while trying to console his sister. Things in this movie take a more supernatural premise that most people will notice from the trailer and plain common sense, because where else are they going to go? Wasn't the Grabber killed at the end in the first entry of the franchise? Which, let's be real, it's seeming this is where the producers want to go after the success of the first movie. They want to go on a stroll down Nightmare on Elm Street. While that might be fun, a lot of the mystique has worn off from the gritty realness of the original Black Phone. Black Phone had a groundedness that made it more compelling because we didn't know what to expect. Therefore, the first one was more interesting and inherently scarier. While there are some genuine jump scares and some creepy imagery, gone is the general dread that came with the claustrophobic nature of the original's basement setting. I did like the cold mountain winter cinematography of this one, and there's a certain claustrophobic sense or nature of being sequestered in a mountain camp during a snowstorm that has some dread associated with it here. However, it still doesn't measure as well to the original setting. I can see why Stephen King may have liked this movie because it reminded me a lot of The Shining, at least in setting. Funny enough, that was also set in Colorado. Also, I like the found footage montage look of the film. It sort of reminded me of the Blair Witch Project, at least in an aesthetic sense. And everything seems to be shot on some old camera or through a Vaseline lens. So while the film has a dirty, grimy, old school look reminiscent of the basement setting of the original, it's missing a lot of the dread and ugliness of what made the original so fascinating. The comparison between the two is like that band that started out with that authentic, intimate sound, and then in their sophomoric release became too overproduced and stale. Black Phone 2 is by no means stale, but it loses a little bit of its authenticness that made the original so good. Also, there is a predictability that saps some of the scariness. In comparison, the original, it had the element of surprise that comes with not knowing where things are going because it was something that hadn't really been done before. I mean, there was probably a similar movie out there, but they are few and far between. You know, there's some fun still to be had with the second one, but I think the lesson to be learned here is that the more of these that they put out, the more muted it becomes. They should not make this into a franchise. Let it stay dead. Otherwise, you may risk the original's legacy. I'm giving Black Phone 2 a 6 out of 10. What were your thoughts on Black Phone 2? Let me know in the comments below. Like and subscribe, and I will see you the next time when we venture into the void.